so glad you're here. I just want to say a couple of things before we get going. Number one, thanks for being flexible with this whole COVID-19. I know some of you had to ease into it. Some of you watching online, you're ready to get back real soon. Just a lot of changes, like thanks for wearing a mask for other people. Thanks for washing your hands and keeping your distance, fist bumps and elbow bumps. Thanks for the kids. Listen, you'll see kids around. Thanks for allowing them to be a part of the church, because this is their church too. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to be in here, and they're just going to be them. Listen, they get to hear, even if they don't understand it, God's word is being taught. They're listening to worship music. So thanks, parents, for loving your church and loving your kids, and just trusting that we do too. So don't be upset. It does not upset us for kids to. They're just going to be kids. Everybody with that? Will you clap for the moms, dads that brought their kids? And the rest of you, I know you'll be back real soon, but this is quite a crowd for a COVID-sensitive church here. So thank you for being here. I want to say something about AJ and Heather. There's a lot to say, a lot of awesome things to say. We're going to save that up mostly for next week. This will be their last Wednesday coming up with our students, and then next Sunday will be their last Sunday, okay? So we're going to make some time and space after the next service for you to really thank them for what they're involved in. Even if you haven't had students in student ministry, they have pushed your church forward and are leaving well. And so and let me say it a little bit more plainly. We're a lot of the older churches used to say they're going to give somebody a pounding, and I never really understood that. But what it really means is, I would love it, and I'm sure they would too. They wouldn't never say it for themselves, but if something that you could, even if it's just a nice note or card, or you giving them some kind of COVID-sensitive hug, whatever it might be. But listen, I'm going to be honest with you. The Holy Spirit talks through gift cards. It really does. And so somewhere that something they like, and if you don't know, just a generic something, cash. I'm sure they don't discriminate against that, but I want to give you the opportunity to do that next week, okay? So we'll talk more about that, but come prepared next week to send them off well with your well wishes and prayers and all that. Is that cool? Everybody clap for them. Right. So I'm excited today. If you're new here, we come to church to be changed and to be inspired. I want it to be known to our church and the people in the community that when they see our church, they know that there's change happening. And so God, I really feel like God wants to be more holy. He wants to be more obedient to His word. And if you're looking, you're online, or you're here today and you're new, I want you to know that the boss of us is God's word. That's how we do. And so we're just going to read God's word and try to do what it says. That's what we're going to do, the best to our ability. And sometimes it stings. Sometimes it comes and interrupts the deepest part of our life. And I understand that. But it is our authority, but it's really moving us for change in the direction that God wants us to move. So if you come for any other reason, then you're here for the wrong reason. Okay? But otherwise, I want you to come expecting. When you invite your friends, that they're going to leave differently, okay? They're going to leave differently. So the reason we started this series called H2O, which means water for all you non-chemistry students, it's because throughout the entire Bible, God has just leveraged what we know about water, just day-to-day knowledge of water, leverages that to teach us about Him. And so I started going through Scripture and just kind of looking at, when we read God's Word, we see a lot of miracles and significant events that happen on or in or near water. And so I just started, and you probably come up with a lot more, but Moses escaping, his mama put him in a little baby boat, right? And then later on, he would part the Red Sea. There's some water. Jonah's entire journey revolved around, when he was in the whale, revolved around water. And Jesus walked on water. Some of the first disciples that Jesus called was at the water's edge. And Jesus taught from a boat. And I'm sure you could go on and on. There's a lot where God just leverages what we know about water to kind of tell His story. And so I think that that's why we We're going to do this series called H2O, and we think it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, to get us started, I don't know this about you or not, but have you ever avoided something or somebody in your life? I want you to be real honest. Like, have you ever had a moment where a cell phone rings and you're like, shh, and you hope they just end it soon or hurry up, but those are the ones that ring the longest? You know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Okay. It's not me, is it? You're not doing it to me. Or maybe if you're out in a store or something, you ever just been to a store and you wind up not getting that item because you saw someone on that aisle, and it's not that you don't like them necessarily, you just don't want to turn it into a 45-minute conversation. Anybody know what I'm talking about? All right? Yeah, okay. The rest of y'all are liars and in church. Or maybe you were that other person being avoided. I don't know. But how about this? Have you ever been at a point in your life where maybe it wasn't a person or a call that you were avoiding, but maybe has there been a moment in your life where you've avoided something because confronting it would be embarrassing in your own life? You know, when you confront something, it causes fear to rise up. Maybe it was related to a bad choice. Maybe it was a decision that you made. I hope you all follow me. And I want to propose to you this morning that for some of us in the room today, we've got issues and circumstances and situations in our life that we avoid because and that's why that issue is the root cause of other areas of our life, particularly in relationships. And maybe that's the reason for some of the marital discord, sometimes the divorce. Maybe it's getting connected with people you just probably shouldn't. Or it seemed maybe that you sabotage some of those relationships that even God designed. And there was this woman in Scripture I want to talk to you today that was avoiding some things in her life. And we're going to look at her story. And I'm going to challenge you to some really difficult things today. Okay? It's going to be kind of antsy today. But I believe if you'll receive it and not avoid it, but expose some of the issues that you have in your life, that you'll find out that, listen, write it down like this: God is able to heal what you expose. There's a choice. But God is able to heal what you expose. And what that does is when you do that, it brings freedom. God will bring you freedom. Because the Bible also says that what we cover up, God will expose. What we try to cover up and put off, letting God confront, He will expose. Ephesians 5:13 says it this way: but everything exposed by the light becomes visible. It's kind of some good news weaved in here. Watch this. And everything that is illuminated becomes a light. It means God will use it. Once you expose it, there's an opportunity for it to be used for light. So those things in your life, those decisions, those situations, if we expose it, or God happens to expose it for us, He will use it for light. He will use it for good. And so it's because God has this kind of beautiful way with mercy and grace to cover it up. And so, in other words, it's always better that we do the exposing, that we initiate that, okay? So we're going to look and talk about this later today. We're going to be in John chapter 4 for most of the time. And so this is about Jesus and the woman at the well. And the entire John 4, the entire book, the entire chapter of John 4 is dedicated to this story because there's so much in it. And so if you're new to Scripture, it'll be on the screen. If you're new, we're trying to make sure people understand the significance of having a Bible that's yours, that has the right print size and the right bolding so you can read it well and it's not a challenge. So if you have your Bibles, just kind of open it halfway and make a right and look for Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And that's where we're going to be in John chapter 4, starting in verse 1. So this is what the Bible says. Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. So he left. Verse 4, which is very significant. Now he had to go through Samaria. That's an important phrase. We'll come back to it. It goes on to say in verse 5, so he came to the town of Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. And it was about noon. So we know where it was. We know what time it was. Verse 7 says, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? Because his disciples had gone to town to buy food. They said, Jesus, I'm going to sit right here. I kind of got this appointment going on. I'm going to stay here. You go get the food. And so verse 9, it says, the Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Verse 11, sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and this well is deep. She's saying, you don't have a bucket, you don't have a rope. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? And Jesus had a response to her question. He says, everyone who drinks with this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I will give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. So I want to point out something really quickly before we get too deep in the message. In the first three verses, if we can go back there, AV team, the first three verses, Jesus, around this conversation that's happening here, he's in this room and he's not dialoguing in it, but the conversation's going on around him involving the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were these religious people that kept really getting in the way of Jesus and his ministry. They were religious people of the day, and they had it all together on the outside. But Jesus wound up calling them hollow people. It's like you're there, you're a shell of something, but there's nothing on the inside. And so they had a very outward religion, okay? But there wasn't anything that was transformational on the inside. So it looks good on the outside, but nothing's on the inside, which means it's not a real faith. It's all religion. And so they were arguing about who was baptizing the most people. Had John baptized the most people, or was it Jesus? And they were arguing about the numbers. They were arguing about the numbers here. And in the middle of this, the Bible said that these religious people were arguing about the things that really don't matter. And what it winds up saying is Jesus leaves the room. He leaves. And I want to point out that we should be reminded as a church that if we ever get to a place where it's not about loving the unlovely and being connected to those that are the most broken and outcast, or people that God has forgotten, then Jesus is going to exit the building. He's going to leave. So if we start talking about things and worrying about things that don't matter, Jesus is like, I'm out. I'm out. I want to go. I'm here for a mission. So I hope you follow me. And then if it ever becomes about religion and fighting, imagine that, religious people fighting. If it ever becomes about that, Jesus leaves the building. So I want you to write it down like this. When religion shows up, that shell that doesn't have any depth to it, there's no transformation, Jesus leaves the room. I heard a story a few weeks back of a woman in a small town. She's going to try a church, and she went in. She didn't know what to wear. She went in, and apparently some of the people in the church kind of pulled her to the side and said, ma'am, you need to go home and pray to God and ask him what you should be wearing at church. So she went home. She prayed about it, and she came back, and she had about the same thing on, thereabouts. And he said, man, we thought we told you to, you need to ask God what you ought to wear to church. And she said, well, sir, I did ask him what I should wear to church, but he says he's never been to your church. You get that? That'll wake you up. Because when religion enters the room, Jesus takes a hike. He's out of there, man. So Jesus, write it down like this. Jesus came for the lost and the lonely. That's who he targeted. And that's what's happened in the first few passages to kind of give us some context of what's going on. And the Bible goes on to say that he had to go to Samaria. He didn't have to go geographically because it wouldn't have made sense. It wouldn't have been a shorter route. It would have been a closer route. It would have been a more convenient route. But he was speaking more about the purpose and intent of why he was going rather than the path and geographical path there. As a matter of fact, most people would have taken a different route. And that's why it doesn't make sense a lot of times when we do what we do. It doesn't make sense, but sometimes we're just compelled because we read God's word and it tells us to do things. A lot of times it doesn't make sense. And so it's not the closest or the easiest route, and especially if they were a Jew, because the Jews had nothing to do with the Samaritans. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the extent of what I mean. And Jesus knew this, and the lady knew this, that Jewish men saw Samaritan women as totally unclean. If they encountered them, if they brushed shoulders with them when they passed by them, they would have had to stand outside the city for 3 to 7 days. They were that dirty. They couldn't share utensils, plates, anything like that. And so there was total disdain for Samaritans. I hope you're getting a picture there. So Jesus having to go through Samaria was a big deal because he's intentionally placing himself in an encounter with a woman that was kind of culturally inappropriate. Somebody he's not supposed to have anything to do with. But Jesus, he always has this way of placing himself right in the middle of our mess. And the reason is because he loves us. He loves us. So our church, that tells me our church should be messy. It means to me that we should find ourselves in the middle of messes. Not to approve or affirm or agree with everything that's going on in their life, but to help them to know the truth. And that's what Jesus was there to do. And he wants to help us expose issues that we all have. Not with the intent to embarrass us, but so that we can connect with him in the most intimate way. And so until we get to the place in our life where we expose these areas of our life, I know it's uncomfortable. Probably hits really deep and really sore spots. But we got to get to a place where we say, God, here's my junk. Here's my poor choices. Here's the issues that I keep avoiding. Because here's the reality. All of us in the room have an issue that we just rather not deal with, that we hope just kind of goes into the shadows of our life that we never have to talk about. Now, the Bible says this lady goes to the well at noon. Pretty significant detail. And this is why it's important, because all the other women would have gone earlier. Before the sun got in the heat of the day, it would have been easier. And so what she did in order to avoid, and we do this, don't we? We go out of our way to avoid some of the pain associated with being exposed. And so the Bible goes on to say that she's been married 5 times. So she's had this relational cloud over her life. And she's become the outcast in her area, in the religious society that they had going on. She would have always been alone. This is somebody that you kind of avoid eye contact. This is somebody that you would have, for instance, when they sit down at a table, you get up from the table. You ever remember seeing movies like that, especially in the 80s? When they sit down, let's all get up. That's what was going on with her. But Jesus had this on his heart, that while these bunch of religious people were judging and pointing fingers and arguing over things that didn't matter, he left the building for a greater purpose. He thought this was more important than all of that, and his purpose was to encounter this woman. Then Jesus, he gets a little edgy, gets a little bit of attitude to him, and if you know, and he said, if you knew who I was, you would be asking me for water. And so this bouncing back and forth, they're having this little dialogue from natural water to living water, something that can quench every thirst. So Jesus is starting to talk about something spiritual here, and follow me on this. Here's what Jesus is saying to this woman. He's saying, there's a thirst inside of you that is spiritual in nature. And this water in this well that you're sitting beside it will never quench it. This thing you're going after, this drink. But if you drink from me, I'm living water, and I'm offering to meet the needs that are the deepest inside of you. Right? So he was saying to this woman, you've been going to the wrong well. He didn't go to approve of what she's been doing or affirm it or just love her through it. He came to tell her what the issue was. He's saying, you've been going to the wrong well. Somebody say, wrong well. Say it one more time. And what he's saying to her is, you've been through relationship after relationship, And I imagine when she got in the first relationship, like, this is it, this is the one, and things went south, and she got divorced. And she got married again. As a matter of fact, she got married and divorced 5 times, and she finally gave up on marriage, and now she's decided just to live with somebody. And what Jesus is saying to her when he's encountering her here is, you've been going to the wrong well to meet that deep need that you have. And there may just be something broken deep, deep inside of you. And here's what I'm believing this morning is as we gather in this, a crowd this size, is that we have things on the inside of us that is broken. We've got a thirst that we just can't quench. And here's the reality. What's broken inside of us, Jesus says, I've got a solution for that. And so listen to me, when you expose your brokenness, Jesus can heal it. So I want you to write that down. Take a picture of it, whatever you got to do. Write that down. Jesus can heal it. You might not can. The doctor might not can. Your friends can't. Your spouse can't. But Jesus can heal it. And he brings brand new life with that. So maybe someone's been going to the wrong well with what we're dealing with in life. And I think there's a few wells that I picked out. You may go home and create your own sermon, your own message, your own Bible study for yourself. And I narrowed down a few things that I hear a lot. Okay? I thought I'd bring those. A few wells that pertain to mostly relationships. And I could spend all day about these different wells, but that are wrong wells. But I'm going to give you some that are hard things. And I think it's going to give you hope at the end, though. Okay? So here's some of the wells that we run into that I think sabotage relationships, that damage marriages, that lead to divorce. And I think for some of us, the well that some of us run to is the well of pornography. Pornography. Some of you are running to the well of pornography. I got some stats for you. May want to jot these down. I think puts it in perspective of just how prevalent the issue is. 70%, that means 7 out of 10 men ages 18 to 34 visit a porn site in a typical month. A typical month. Well, I didn't visit that many that month, but it's a typical month. 1 in 6 women struggle with porn addiction. So it's not just a man issue, right? Listen to this one, parents. 90%. That means 9 out of 10. And don't be foolish enough to think it's not your kid. Of kids aged 8 to 16 have viewed pornography. 90% of kids 8 to 16 have viewed it. I know. The largest consumers of pornography are 12 to 17-year-old boys. Boys. Listen to this. Every second, 28,000 people view porn. Every second. So that means what I've just, as long as I've been talking about this, there's probably been 100,000 people looking at it, just in that short amount of time. Porn sites make up 12% of the internet. 12%. And what was spent on pornography last year is equal to what our government spent on foreign aid in the same time frame. So some of you are running that well, and it's the root cause, if you were to dig down to it, of the struggles in your marriage and your relationships. It could be the reason that some of your relationships are sabotaged. Like, what happened there? Pornography. And Jesus is meeting with you today, and he's sitting beside you at the well, not from a distance, but beside you in the mess, at that well you're drawing from, because that's just what he does. We'll get in there with you in it. And here's what he's saying. There's a better way. There's a better way than this. I've got something designed way better than this. So some of you are saying, it's not really a big issue. Nobody really knows. I'm not hurting anybody. But listen to me. Write this down. What you do in the secret areas of your life bleed into every other area of your life. They just do. Some of you are killing your wives with their self-esteem and wondering why she's wondering why she's not enough. And remember, what you do with your, I wrote this down because I couldn't remember. What you're doing in your present will eventually become your past, and somehow it'll find its way in your future. That's just how it works. It'll find its way even in your future children. Scripture says this. There were too many to write down. If you write this down and go look for it, it'll show you all of them. Sins of the father visits their children, generation after generation after generation. You'll find 10 of them that say that. Sins of the father visit them, okay? That means it gets in the way. So it does, doesn't it? It does, according to the Scripture, because that's our authority. It's not just my opinion. The Bible says that the sins of the father visit the children. Goes to see them, right? So you are hurting people because you're drawing from the wrong well. It's the wrong well. But Jesus is saying, you can be set free from that because there is a better way. That's the hope. The bad news is it's the wrong well. But the good news is you can be healed from it. The good news is there's a better way. There's another way. I've got something else for you from that. That wasn't what I created you for. So for some of you, the wrong well, you run into the wrong well, and it's this one. The well of giving yourself away sexually outside of biblical marriage. You might need a second to write all that down. It's a lot of words. The wrong well. I've just been in church a long time. I've been in the world a while. I'm only in my late 20s, but I've learned a lot in those 29 years. The wrong well is the well of giving yourself away sexually outside of biblical marriage. You've been maybe bought into the culture's reasons of, well, we love each other. We're going to get married eventually. No, wait a minute, Pastor. Are you going to buy a car without test driving it, kicking the tires? You really going to do that? And I thought of the answer to that question. So I've heard it a lot. It's like they write a book about it. Where'd you get that? But at what point did a husband or a wife become something that you purchase with the very intention of trading or selling at some point? So not a fair comparison. That would make the relationship about sex. And when God's word says that what it is a covenant between a man, woman, and their creator. It's not a car contract. It's a covenant with God. And the reality is when we avoid these issues in our life and we try to gain with our friends and people around us okay in those things, then we destroy what God meant for us to enjoy when we do it the wrong way. Because he gives us this gift of marriage. It's full of sex. Amen. Amen. But the good news is Jesus makes things new. And he says there's a better way. I got another wrong well for you that people run to. Is substance abuse. Substance abuse. I have a place in my heart for people that abuse substance. Most of them do not want to be there. That is not something they went too far or something is deep behind all of these things. But so I'm not demonizing this. It's just a well that runs to that Jesus is the answer for. Sometimes it's alcohol, right? Jesus says, I know that this may feel like it helps temporarily, but I can meet the deepest need that you're trying to meet. I've got living water. The other one is weed. I don't know what all you want to call it. I looked it up in the back here to look for all the names. All the teenagers are going to, the Lord might not let me pull it back up. I bet he won't. No, he won't. But I read things like Acapulco Gold, Texas Tea, Devil Weed, all of it. I mean, there's just a lot of names, whatever you want to call it. Listen, there's actually something in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, that call it, and you already knew this, you didn't need a big old thick book to tell you this, is something called amotivational syndrome. It's just what it is. And it just means that, I wrote a couple of them down here. Just reduced energy, reduced attentiveness, impaired desire to participate in social interactions, reduced motivation, reduced desire to work, reduced desire to compete in any meaningful activities. It does something to you. So although it might help in the moment, I did like this, is that the international sign? But for some people, it's really no joke. It is something that Jesus says, listen, there's a better way. There's a better way. But the reality is, these are spiritual issues that we tend to avoid confronting or allow to be confronted in our life because it is offensive. It challenges something you think is helping you. And we resist and stiff-arm anybody, any new authority that comes in and wants to show us that there is a better way. So write it down like this. The areas of our lives that we refuse to surrender will always hold us hostage. Every single time. It restricts our freedom. That's the freedom to experience the fullness of what God designed us for. Right? So the dialogue continued here. Verse 16 it says, he told her, this is Jesus told her, go and call your husband and come back. She said, I have no husband. And Jesus said to her, you are right when you say that you don't have a husband. And the fact is, you've had 5 husbands. He's saying your pain is deep. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you said is quite true. Sir, the woman says, she's trying to be respectful here. I can see that you are a prophet. That's probably the biggest duh in the Bible, right? Verse 26 says, the woman said, I know the Messiah is coming. I've heard about it. I have some exposure about God. I believe this defines a lot of us. We have a working knowledge, maybe even saved. You've given your life to Jesus. I know the Messiah is coming, the one who's called Christ. And when he comes, he will explain all this to us. And Jesus said, I am the Messiah. This guy talking to you in front of you, it's me. I am the Messiah. And right when he was in the middle of what? Feel this. Right when he's in the middle of the deepest part of their conversation, the disciples come back. All the people trying to follow Jesus. They get in the way sometimes, don't we? It says just then, right at that moment, it even says it, just then, his disciples came back. And they were shocked to find him talking to a woman. But none of them had the nerve to ask. They were chicken. What do you want with her? They didn't ask her this. They were thinking this. What do you want with her? Why are you talking to her? I think she caught the hint and left. You ever just not give somebody eye contact or give them get out of here? That's always happened. I believe she caught the hint and she left. And here's an amazing verse, verse 28. The woman left her water jar. Now, I didn't tell you earlier, she would take a jar in the heat of the day. This jar would be big because she's got to fill it up and take it back and do all the things that you would do with water back then. And I'm sure it was a big jar. I'm sure it was a heavy jar, especially when you're carrying it back. It's their source. She's carrying their source that was so important. And the Bible says after her interaction with Jesus, her encounter with Jesus, that she left her source of water, this jar that represented her source. The Bible says she left the jar beside that well, the one that was the wrong well, and ran back to the village. She couldn't wait to get back. She was going to do something with her encounter right then. She wasn't going to sit on it a week. She wasn't going to think about it. She just heard Jesus, the Messiah, speak into her. She had an encounter with him. I'm not going to wait a day, a week, a month. I'm not going to sit around for 10 years before I do something with what he told me. And she ran back to the village telling everyone, not just my family know, it says everyone, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could he possibly be the Messiah? So the people came streaming from the village to see him. Verse 31 says, meanwhile, the disciples were urging Jesus, Rabbi, eat something, eat. We went and got this food for you. Eat. But Jesus replied, he's probably still pretty ticked. I can feel it. I can feel it. He says, I have the kind of food you know nothing about. And they said, did someone bring him food while we were gone? Sometimes somebody will bring me, my mother-in-law brought me some lunch, and they're like, I can't get around with this stupid foot. And she brought, I didn't say nothing about it. She brought me some food. And then Holly will call me a little bit later, an hour later, and say, you want me to stop and get you something? I said, yeah. Or she'll cook something, and it's like, why aren't you eating that? Did you eat or something? You know what I'm saying? And so that's what's happening here. Like, he must have ate or something. Someone must have brought him something. And y'all quit texting me. did someone bring him some food or something while we were gone? Then Jesus explained, my nourishment, what makes me full, I get full from it. That means I don't have to chase other things. I don't have to worry about what I'm eating next. My nourishment, what makes me full, comes from doing the will of God. And it says, who sent me, and from finishing his work. So many people are walking around here full. If I go to the beach one more time, how many times you fit the beach? One more of this, cruise, one more of this, one more of that. Go for it. But some people, it's not just, I don't think it's just that. It's when it's chronic, it's like they're trying to feel something. Whether it's substance abuse or relationships or whatever it is that's pursuing that tries to make you full. He said, let me tell you what I get full from. Doing what God's called me to do and finishing it. I've never noticed those two things beside each other before. Maybe just I don't read well. I don't know. But it's doing and finishing. Some people start, but they don't finish. You ever seen that? You can watch any church chart. And you'll see people that I'll start, I want to do, but they don't finish. He said, I get full from that. I get full from it. So Jesus was always kind of known to drop a hammer. He could really, and he's letting in on his disciples to know that this is what I'm here for. This exact thing that you walked up on. You worried about food, but I'm more concerned about doing what God's called me to do, my Father's called me to do, and finish it. So we'll finish with this. Here's what we'll finish with. Write it down like this. People who have actually encountered Jesus can't help but tell about their well. People who have actually encountered him, they can't shut up. It's on the tip of their tongue all the time to talk about. Somehow, you're talking about something that's going on in your life, they'll find a way to talk about Jesus, to praise Jesus, to inform you about Jesus, invite you into something about Jesus. People who have actually encountered Jesus can't help it. They can't help but tell about their well. Meaning, I used to drink from this well. Sounds like a testimony, doesn't it? Man, I used to do drugs. I used to do these things. But I got me a new well. That was the wrong one. So they have a story attached to it. Let's go back to verse 28 and 29. The woman left her jar beside the well and ran back to the village telling everyone. It says, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could he possibly be the Messiah? So because she said it, so the people came streaming from the village to see him. Everybody say, come and see. I don't think that was everybody. Say, come and see. That is actually what you're doing when you're living life. You've got different jobs, you're in different schools, you're in different things, but somewhere in there needs to be a come and see. Come and see. And come and see means that I'm there too. It's not go and see like, hey, you should go to my church. I'm not going to be there, but you should go and see. It's awesome. It should be come and see. I'm going to go back there with you. I want to escort you back. I want to walk with you back to where this well is, the real well. Verse 39 says, many, here's what is the result. Here's the result of her allowing her to be exposed by Jesus. Here's the result. Many Samaritans. That means not Jewish people, not God's chosen people. Many Samaritans from the village believed in Jesus because the woman had said, he told me everything I ever did. She gave a testimony. She gave a story of her encounter with Jesus. And the Bible says that's why they believed, is because of her story. And when they came out to see him, they begged him to stay in their village. Begged him. A lot of times we uninvite Jesus out of certain situations in our life. Like, God, I want you in all of this, but except this part over here. I'm going to keep this for me. But when it came out, they begged him to stay in their village, in the most intimate part of their life, their village, my everyday life. So he stayed for 2 days, long enough for many more to hear the message and believe. So they didn't just hear it, they believed it. Then they said to the woman, now we believe, not just because of what you told us, but because we have heard him for ourselves. Now we know that he is indeed the Savior of the world. So your story draws people in. I love who he used. He didn't go to a bunch of religious people to say, hey, y'all want to help me get some of these people that are lost and lonely and forgotten? He used somebody, the least likely of persons, to do that. And they said, and when we got in front of him, we heard his word, it changed us. We know that he is the Savior of the world. So she wound up leading an entire village, a whole city full of people came to faith in Jesus because she allowed herself to be exposed and she went to tell her story. So, this church is filled. I hope it always will be with, I wrote it down. What do you want? Skanks, idiots, users, abusers, liars, and cheaters. To the point that if you knew what they really did when they came in, you probably wouldn't have shook their hand. But I feel like, man, when those people come, God is using them over and over and over. And it's not that secret of a weapon that God is going to use those people. If they allowed, not just to come and have them fill up the seats, but they came expecting a change. Expecting change. That God would change their hearts, their lives, the way they're living life. And if he does that, I believe that there's a part that we play in that, though. One, allowing God to expose us and try to head that off exposing ourselves. But creating that culture, that church where we want those people here, but we expect them to allow God to change their life and how they're living this life. So, I thought this was pretty cool in 1 Timothy chapter 1, 15 and 16, somewhere through there. This is a trustworthy saying. This is Paul talking. And everyone should accept it. He means you're going to use this. This is going to be helpful for you to know. You need to remind yourself over and over again here. This is a trustworthy saying. Put it in your back pocket and use it. Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners. That's what he came for. And he's talking about himself, I'm the worst of them all. He's telling this story. But God had mercy on me so that Christ Jesus could use me as a prime example. I wish I would have underlined it for you. A prime example of his great patience and with even the worst sinners. Do we have patience with sinners? We read them, hurry up. You got to change right now. The others will realize that they too can believe in him and receive eternal life. You see, Paul was a terrorist. He was a murderer of Christians. And it would be like, imagine Osama bin Laden getting saved and being one of the best preachers in the world. It would have been kind of like that because he tracked down Christians and he pulled them out of churches and killed them. And what Paul's saying here is, God saved me so that I could be an example of his love. And what I wish I would have underlined is, he said he could use me as a prime example. A trophy. I want you to imagine a trophy. A trophy. When I was a kid, they gave out trophies for, you had to win to get one back then. You know what I'm saying? But I had this mantle in my house. Just a mantle. And every time the season's over, I put it up there. And it would make me remember what date. It was for soccer. It was this time of year. I remember what we did to win. It was a trophy. There's a story behind every trophy that we have. As a matter of fact, when you walk out and go in the lobby and you see on the left that trophy case, that's been here since probably the 70s at least. But I played all the sports here, and my coach would always, whatever sport it was, give a trophy for the team. We won first place, we won the championship, put a picture there, and we couldn't wait to see it in that trophy case now. Couldn't wait. And everybody past it would know, and there's a story that we would be able to tell. And I want to tell you that I feel like what Paul's saying here is God, when we give our life and let him expose and let him use us for what he's called us for, we let him just tear the things away that get in the way of what he's called us for. Everything that we've mentioned. That we become his prime example, his trophy. When we do that, we have a story to tell. There's a story to tell. And I think it's just significant to me is all those trophies that we've had in there. And me and a lot of guys, some of them probably in this room, the best trophy in there now says Revolution Church. And I think that's the best trophy in the world. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. So we are a trophy. And we do have a story to tell. A story to tell. If there was really change, then you have a story to tell. Because we kind of get in the way of God's glory when we don't tell our story. Let me go back here, my favorite part of the story in verse 28. The Bible says again that the woman left her jar beside the well and ran back to the village telling everyone, come and see, come and see, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could he possibly be the Messiah? She hadn't got it all figured out. She said, I don't know everything about the Bible. I just talked to him, but I don't know, I'm changed. So the people came because even with a little bit of lack of assurance, people still were drawn to her, and her jar was her story. And she left it behind because now she's got a new story. She's made brand new. So listen. And maybe it wasn't a well that I mentioned, but what about that wrong well? What about that idea of the wrong well? What are you drawing from that's not Jesus? It's not the well that he intended for you to draw from. Listen, you've got an opportunity to leave here differently. You can either stiff arm God drawing you near to him, and he's confronting you using his word to do that. You can leave here differently with a brand new story. And if that's true about you, you wouldn't show up without somebody else, because people they're enthralled by the story that you tell about God. Or you can stiff arm again, God trying to draw you near. Instead of being drawn to him, you've chosen to be offended. What does God's word do to you in this moment?